Hey, what's up, misers? My name is Alan, and I teach everyday people like you and me how to identify rare coins in your pocket change. Today, we're going to talk about the 1943 Lincoln cent. You'll learn why it's special, why it's steel, and what it's worth. A lot of coin collectors out there wonder how valuable and rare the 1943 penny is. And that's understandable because the penny looks so different than the ones that we're used to seeing. Because of World War II, the government needed copper that was normally used for pennies in order to make ammunition and other military equipment. The U.S. Mint started working on different ways to conserve the metals they needed for the war efforts and also continue to mint coins. There were several alternatives used to come up with different metals and, believe this, different types of plastics in order to replace the standard bronze alloy that was used for the penny. Finally, they decided on a steel planchet coated with zinc. 1943 wheat cents were minted at Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. And you can tell where your penny was minted based on the mint mark that you'll find underneath of the date. If your penny doesn't have a mint mark under the date, it was minted in Philadelphia. Because this penny is steel, it's the only regular issue U.S. coin that can be picked up with a magnet. But if you can't pick up your 1943 cent with a magnet, it doesn't mean that it's fake. We'll talk about why that might happen a little bit later in this video. There have been upwards of 40 1943 wheat cents that were minted on copper planchets. Most likely this error happened when copper planchets were left in the press hopper and press machines during the changeover from copper to steel blanks. But you need to be careful if you find one of these because a lot of these have been counterfeited by either copper plating a regular 1943 penny or by altering the dates on other copper pennies, usually 1945, 1948, and 1949 coins. One way to determine if your 1943 copper cent is an authentic error or if it's actually a fraud is to weigh the penny. A copper cent should weigh about 3.11 grams, give or take a couple hundredths of a gram. A steel cent should weigh approximately 2.702 grams, give or take a few hundredths or thousandths of a gram. If your 1943 looks like it's made out of steel, there's a possibility it could be made out of tin. This might be the result of a penny being minted on an experimental planchet or some other mistake by the mint. A tin planchet is made out of about 86.41% tin and 8.3% antimony with some other trace metals included. These pennies will weigh about the same as a steel cent, so you won't be able to tell the difference just based on weight. Did you ever come across a slug when you were coin roll hunting pennies? An error like this can be easily missed by just passing it off as a slug. If you ever come across anything that looks at all like a blank planchet, you should do your research, weigh it, check the edges, and take it to a professional to try to have it validated before you pass it off as a slug, especially when there's a possibility of it being a 1943 blank planchet. Here's a 1943 Philadelphia minted penny that was struck on a planchet. This penny graded AU58 and sold for $305,500. Now, it might seem like it's impossible to find a penny like this, but how many people out there know that a 1943 penny is supposed to be struck on a steel planchet? What if somebody put together a coin collection when they were 10 years old and put a 1943 penny in their album and didn't pay attention to whether or not it should be steel? That's one place I would look if I was new to collecting. Another place would be any wheat cent collection out there. If you have a parent, grandparent, or another relative that collects wheat pennies, take a look at their collection and pay close attention to the dates. Face it, if you're not a collector and you see a steel cent mixed in with a bunch of copper pennies, you're going to notice that right away. But if you have a 1943 bronze penny mixed in with a bunch of other bronze pennies, you're not going to know that you've got something valuable in there. So if you do have a relative that you know collects coins and has a collection of wheat pennies, stop by this weekend, go through them together, and just see if there happens to be one of them in there. You never know, you might get lucky and hit that lottery. You can see here that there are several 1943 pennies that are struck on bronze planchets, more than what you probably realized at first. And the prices are determined mainly on the grade of the coin. Here you have one that's graded VF35. This one sold for $141,000. And here's another one here graded P1 that sold for $88,125. Here's a 1943 5-piece experimental cent collection. This item sold for over $58,000, and it contains 5 different 1943 pennies on experimental planchets. There's a 1943 Type 1C T1 blank planchet at 2.7 grams, a 1943 zinc-coated steel planchet at 2.56 grams, a 1943 Type 1C copper-coated steel planchet at 2.9 grams, a 1943 4% antimony 6% Fe plated planchet at 2.7 grams, and another 1C T1 blank planchet at 2.7 grams. This one's interesting right here. It's a 1943 penny struck on a Netherlands 25-cent planchet. This is a good reason to make sure anything you have that doesn't make sense, you have it looked at by a professional. Initially, it looks like a 43 penny that was minted on a copper planchet, but if you weighed it, you would see that it weighs 3.52 grams, much heavier than the regular copper planchet that comes in at 3.11 grams. Somebody might take a look at this and think that it's a fake 1943 copper penny and discard it at that point. But you'd be making a big mistake because this one right here sold for $24,000. You could even talk yourself into this being fake if you take a look at some of the areas right here where it looks like some of the patina is missing from the coin. If you're in the market for a 1943 penny, take a look at heritage auctions. You're in luck. You can find one heck of a deal on this right here, this 1943 S, struck on a bronze planchet for only $170,000 currently. There's only 15 days left on this penny, so if you want it, you might have to act fast. Let me know if you end up buying it. Maybe you'll consider sending me a finder's fee. There are a few other possibilities if you're a collector and you're seriously interested in buying one of these pennies at auction. There's this 1943 San Francisco minted penny, graded MS68, and it's currently on sale now for $3,625. I want to know how many of you have a 1943 penny in your collection. Leave me a comment below and let me know. This one here is interesting. I would love to find a penny like this. This is a 1943 cent struck over a Cuba 1 centavo piece. This one was graded MS62 by PCGS and sold at auction for $10,925. This 1943 penny was struck on a dime planchet. Dime planchets during this time were 90% silver and 10% copper. Here's a 1943 Denver minted steel penny with a repunch mint mark. If you take a look down here at the D on the mint mark, it's pretty obvious that it was repunched right here. Don't waste your time looking for a repunch mint mark on the Philadelphia minted penny. I looked for many, many years and haven't come across any. I doubt that they exist. Here's a 1943 penny struck on a Curacao 25-cent planchet. This one graded XF40 and sold for $14,950. How do you know that this isn't a steel planchet? You have to weigh it. This one weighed in at 3.5 grams. I can't stress enough, don't discount the authenticity of your penny just because it doesn't fit what it's supposed to. If something doesn't make sense, like the weight or the appearance, and you're not sure, do some research on the internet. Take your penny to a professional and have them look at it, or check in with somebody you trust on a coin collecting forum, a Facebook group, or send me an email. Here's another 5-piece experimental planchet set. You can see the different types of planchets that were tested here. And this one sold for $12,000. And here's another experimental planchet on the 1943 penny. This one sold for $5,040. We talked a little bit earlier about some of these pennies minted on a tin planchet. This is one of those. It's 86.4% tin, 8.4% antimony, 1.8% copper, and 1% vanadium. Here's an obvious error. This 1943 S penny was struck off-center. It's about 15% off-center, and it sold at auction for $6,756. And here's a 1943 blank planchet. This planchet is copper-plated steel. So if you come across a planchet like this, it's not going to weigh in as a normal copper planchet at 3.11 grams, and it's not going to weigh in as a zinc planchet at 2.5 grams. Don't write it off as a slug. Take it to a professional to take a look at. This one here sold for $4,800. Here's a 1943 steel cent that was struck through a cap die. This is another error that would be awesome to find. This one here sold for $2,530. And here's a 1943 penny on a clip planchet. This one here is 35% curved clip. It graded as MS64 and sold for $690. Here's one that was double struck in the collar with a 25% indentation. This penny sold for $411. And here's what the reverse looks like. There are a couple double die varieties for the 1943 steel cent as well. This one here is a double die reverse. This was graded MS66 by PCGS. You can see the doubling here on the N in 1 and repeated here on the N in cent. as well as doubling on different letters in E pluribus unum. And here's another double die variety. This one here is a double die obverse. And you can see some obvious doubling at this magnification in Liberty and the date. Here's what it looks like under magnification. You can see some of the doubling there. Notice how thick the bottom portion of the 9 is, and some doubling on the 4 and the 3 in the date. This DDO recently sold on eBay by the reputable and prestigious coin seller Shagnasty59. No offense intended, Shagnasty59, just an obvious joke about your username. Do you want to learn more about coins worth money? If so, click on the short playlist to the right. Thanks for watching. Mint Miser. Out.